Parliamentary structure and opposing government factions, unrest within the judicial system, changes to government structure implementations to move forward, just representation for all communities and groups, and allegiance to Australia's interests and well-being. Military structural reforms to form a cohesive armed forces strategy and ways to implement these changes. Okay, let's break down the hypothetical scenario of addressing parliamentary structure, opposing government factions, judicial unrest, government structural changes, just representation, military reforms, and their implementation within Australia, all while maintaining allegiance to Australia's interests and well-being. This requires careful consideration of constitutional principles, democratic values, and strategic imperatives. Addressing parliamentary structure and opposing government factions. Current structure. Australia has a bicameral parliament consisting of the House of Representatives, lower house, and the Senate, upper house. The party or coalition that wins a majority of seats in the House of Representatives forms the government. Challenges: increased political polarization. Growing polarization can lead to gridlock, making it difficult to pass legislation. Erosion public trust. Public trust in Parliament is declining due to perceptions of corruption, self-interest, and lack of accountability. Dominance of major parties. Smaller parties and independent candidates often struggle to gain representation. Potential reforms: electoral reform, proportional representation in the Senate. Shifting to a more proportional system in the Senate could give smaller parties a greater voice. Preferential voting in the House of Representatives, ensuring a clear majority mandate for elected members. Strengthening parliamentary committees. Empowering parliamentary committees to conduct independent inquiries and scrutinize government actions. Code of conduct for members of Parliament. Implementing a strict code of conduct with clear penalties for breaches of ethics and integrity. Independent Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. Establishing an independent body to investigate allegations of misconduct by members of Parliament. Constitutional amendments require a referendum. Other reforms can be implemented through legislation. Building cross-party support is essential for successful implementation. Addressing unrest within the judicial system. Challenges: perceived political interference, concerns about political interference in judicial appointments and decisions. Lack of diversity. The judiciary is not representative of the diversity of Australian society. Backlog of cases. Delays in the judicial system can undermine access to justice. Potential reforms. Independent Judicial Appointments Commission. Establishing an independent commission to recommend judicial appointments based on merit, experience, and diversity. Increased funding for the courts. Providing more funding for the courts to reduce case backlogs and improve access to justice. Alternative dispute resolution. Promoting the use of alternative dispute resolution methods, such as mediation and arbitration, to resolve disputes outside of the court system. Judicial training and education, providing ongoing training and education for judges to ensure they are up to date on the latest legal developments and best practices. Some reforms can be implemented through legislation. Others require changes to judicial procedures and practices. Consultation with the judiciary is essential for successful implementation. Third, changes to government structure. Challenges: duplication of services, overlap and duplication of services between different government departments and agencies. Inefficiency and bureaucracy. Bureaucratic processes and red tape can slow down decision-making and hinder innovation. Lack of coordination. Inadequate coordination between different levels of government, federal, state, and local. Potential reforms: streamlining government departments, consolidating government departments and agencies to eliminate duplication and improve efficiency. Digital transformation, investing in digital technologies to streamline government services and improve accessibility. Decentralization of services, decentralizing government services to bring them closer to the people. Performance-based funding, linking funding for government agencies to their performance. Citizen engagement, implementing mechanisms for citizen engagement in government decision-making. Requires careful planning and consultation with stakeholders. Phased implementation is often the best approach. Strong leadership is essential for driving change. IV, implementations to move forward just representation for all communities and groups. Challenges: Underrepresentation of Indigenous Australians. Indigenous Australians are significantly underrepresented in Parliament and other government institutions. Gender inequality. Women are still underrepresented in leadership positions in politics and business. Lack of representation for minority groups. Minority groups, e.g., people with disabilities, LGBTQ+ individuals, migrants, often lack adequate representation in decision-making processes. Potential reforms. Constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians. Formally recognizing Indigenous Australians in the Constitution and giving them a greater voice in decision-making. Quotas and targets. Implementing quotas or targets to increase the representation of women and minority groups in Parliament and other institutions. Affirmative action programs. Implementing affirmative action programs to address historical discrimination and promote equal opportunity. Community consultations. Conducting regular consultations with diverse communities to ensure their voices are heard. Mentoring programs. Establishing mentoring programs to support individuals from underrepresented groups in pursuing leadership positions. Requires a commitment to diversity and inclusion from all levels of government and society. Cultural sensitivity and awareness are essential. Monitoring and evaluation are needed to track progress and identify areas for improvement. Allegiance to Australia's interests and well-being. Defining national interest. It's crucial to define Australia's interests and well-being in a way that is inclusive, sustainable, and aligned with global values. This should encompass economic prosperity, national security, social cohesion, environmental sustainability, respect for human rights, international cooperation, maintaining sovereignty, protecting Australia's sovereignty and independence while engaging in international cooperation, promoting economic competitiveness, fostering a strong and competitive economy that creates jobs and opportunities for all Australians, strengthening national security, protecting Australia from threats to its security, both domestic and international, protecting the environment, conserving Australia's natural environment for future generations, promoting social cohesion, building a society that is inclusive, fair, and just for all Australians. 2. Military structural reforms to form a cohesive armed forces strategy. Challenges: joint operations. Improving coordination and interoperability between the different branches of the Australian Defence Force, ADF, Navy, Army, Air Force, technological integration. Integrating new technologies such as cyber warfare and artificial intelligence into the ADF. Adaptability to new threats. Adapting the ADF to meet the evolving threats of the 21st century, such as terrorism, cyber attacks, and climate change. Potential reforms: joint command structure. Strengthening the joint command structure to improve coordination between the different branches of the ADF. Investment in new technologies. Investing in new technologies such as cyber warfare capabilities, unmanned systems, and advanced sensors. Cybersecurity enhancement. Bolster cybersecurity to prevent any hacking from foreign powers. Cybersecurity's boost awareness for government staff and encourage best practices. Training and education. Providing training and education for ADF personnel to prepare them for the challenges of modern warfare. Integration of reserves. Fully integrating reserve forces into the ADF. Strategic partnerships. Strengthening strategic partnerships with key allies such as the United States, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Requires a clear articulation of Australia's defence strategy and objectives, strong leadership from the Chief of the Defence Force and other senior officers, ongoing investment in research and development, adaptability, and a willingness to learn from experience. Ways to implement these changes: establish a National Reform Commission. Create an independent commission composed of experts from diverse fields, law, economics, political science, public administration, military, etc., to develop detailed recommendations for reform. Conduct public consultations. Engage in extensive public consultations to gather feedback on proposed reforms. Develop a phased implementation plan. Develop a phased implementation plan that prioritizes the most urgent reforms and allows for adjustments based on experience. Secure bipartisan support. Seek bipartisan support for reforms to ensure their long-term sustainability. Legislative action. Enact legislation to implement the recommended reforms. Executive orders. Use executive orders to implement changes that do not require legislative action. Administrative reforms. Implement administrative reforms within government departments and agencies to improve efficiency and accountability. Monitoring and evaluation. Establish mechanisms to monitor and evaluate the impact of the reforms and make adjustments as needed. Accountability. Ensure that each department and process has systems of accountability and reviews implemented. Addressing the challenges facing Australia requires a comprehensive and coordinated approach that addresses parliamentary structure, judicial independence, government efficiency, social justice, and national security. By implementing the reforms outlined above, Australia can strengthen its democracy, improve its governance, and create a more prosperous and equitable future for all its citizens. To ensure success, there must be an acknowledgement of the problems, a clear plan of implementation, and systems of accountability to determine effectiveness. A public register of performance and goals is recommended.